how to create a culture of accountability in the workplace. One of the most frequently asked questions that I get from leaders is, how do I create a culture of accountability? It feels like the holy grail. If only we could get our employees to take accountability, then we could get the results that we're trying to achieve. Well, there's actually two sides to accountability. On the one side is making sure that people do their jobs, and on the other side is empowering people to be able to do their jobs, giving them the environment, the resources, and the tools necessary to get work done. Now, the problem is, oftentimes, employees feel like they can't take accountability because they haven't been given the resources. They haven't been empowered. And on the other side, you've got managers who are saying, I have empowered my people, but for some reason, they just won't take accountability. So the first step in accountability is understanding that it is a continuum. On one end of the continuum is accountability, and on the other is empowerment. And so we have to find that middle ground, somewhere in between, in which people are not only taking accountability, but they are being empowered to do so. If you have employees that feel that they can't take accountability, then your first step is to role model doing it yourself. Because as the leader, you are showing them the way to accountability. By the end of this video, we will give you a simple model to take accountability and to increase accountability by empowering your organization. Accountability is usually seen as who's going to take the blame. It seems like, who do we get to blame for what didn't work? But that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about rising above your circumstances to take ownership for achieving the desired results. And that can be done at any level of the organization. We're dealing with a difficult dynamic though, because according to Gallup, 79% of employees feel like they are being judged on performance metrics that are beyond their control. That would be incredibly demoralizing if I felt like I didn't have any impact on my performance review at the end of the year. But if 79% of your employees feel like that, you may have a disengaged workforce. So the accountability actually starts with leaders to connect what their employees are doing with the metrics that they're being measured against. Leaders have to make sure that they are painting a picture of how each of their employees are tied to the key results that we're trying to achieve and how they impact that bottom line. With some roles, it's easier than others. Obviously, salespeople can clearly see how they either are or are not impacting our revenue goal. But what about someone who's a copywriter in a marketing team? Is it as clear to them how they're making a difference in revenue or in operational efficiencies or in margin, for example? It's up to the leader to help connect those dots. The purpose that I connect to is to unleash the power of culture, to inspire businesses and people to reach their full potential. If that purpose speaks to you too, then subscribe to this channel to join a community of people who are passionate about workplace culture. So what does empowering your employees to take accountability actually look like? Well, it starts with creating a common language to understand what accountability is and isn't. Some of the language that we use is above the line and below the line thinking. Above the line thinking is thinking in which we take ownership for what's going on in our environment. When we see a problem, we take the initiative to own that problem, to solve for that problem, and then we actually do what we came up with. That's above the line thinking. It's taking accountability. And below the line thinking looks like blaming others, or waiting for someone to tell you what to do, pointing fingers at other people, and playing the victim. That can be extremely detrimental to the culture that you're trying to create, and it can fester a toxic culture. So in order to empower your employees to engage in above the line thinking, you can give them a model. And the model is the 4 steps you take when you take accountability. And they are see it, own it, solve it, and do it. See it is to identify the problem, to understand what the dynamics are and what's at play. Own it is to decide that you're going to do something about it. To solve it is to figure out and problem solve what steps might be taken to resolve that issue. And do it is to take the initiative, to actually follow through on the ideas that you had. So here's what it looks like in practice. I was working with an organization a couple weeks ago, and we had two teams that were coming together trying to foster a sense of collaboration. One of the teams was sales, and one of the teams was marketing. So sales and marketing have a reputation of not always getting along. And in the sales team, a lot of the salespeople were sharing that they were not being given the resources they needed to close deals. They needed more support from marketing, that they didn't have enough assets to really do their job effectively. Well, that was below the line thinking. And no shocker here, the marketing team was also engaging in below the line thinking. And the marketing team said, well, the problem is we're not being told what the customer wants. We're not being told what your conversations are with the prospects. So we can't develop the thing that you need because you're not communicating with us about what it is that you need. So here we have an opportunity to empower the organization to take accountability. And what we did was we asked each group to think about what they could do, not what the other team could do, but what they could do to solve this problem. So they've identified the problem, they saw it. Now we ask them to own that problem. We ask sales not to identify what marketing could do, but to identify what sales could do. And we ask marketing the same question, what can marketing do? Once they owned the problem, then they worked on solving it. In breakout groups, they started to brainstorm what their side of the street was, what it is that they were doing to contribute to the communication breakdown. As it turns out, the sales team said, you know what? We're not inviting you to these calls often enough. We're not communicating what we're hearing from the market. And the marketing team said, you know what? We're not initiating conversations with you often enough to ask what it is that you need. Both realized that they had been engaged in below the line thinking. And so the solution, they finally all did it. Both sales and marketing had takeaways about what they would do to rise above the circumstances and take ownership for achieving the desired results. There was no more blame game and no more pointed fingers. We have an accountability ebook just for you. It is a free gift. So if this is a topic of interest to you, then I highly encourage you to go to gift.culture.io to download your free resources, or you can click on the link below in the description.